Hi everyone, this is Katie Carnes, and I'm one of the instructional technologists at the Center for E-Learning and Connected Environments at the University of Central Oklahoma. So we're back this month with our September Tech Tip, and we're talking about Zoom. So what Zoom is it's the new web, audio, and video conferencing system at UCO, and Zoom gives you the ability to create online virtual meetings. So all faculty and staff at UCO have access to Zoom, and so I'm going to give you an introduction and we'll talk about how you can get started today and utilize it in your classroom. All right, so first things first, the best way and quickest way to get to Zoom is to go to uco.zoom.us. So I'm going to go to this login screen, and where this will take you is to the options to join a meeting or sign in. So if you join a meeting, what that will take you to is you can insert a meeting ID or a personal link name, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little later on. But I'm going to go back, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign in. Now it's probably, because I've recently signed in, it's probably going to automatically take me to my account and my profile. But if this is your first time using Zoom, it might ask you for two authentication prompts. It's not going to ask me for those, but it might take you through a little bit of a login process, but go ahead and do that, especially before your first time setting up a meeting or anything like that. It's just good to go ahead and authenticate your account and get that going. So I'm going to press sign in. All right, so now I've got my profile. So this is, there are lots of different options that we have here in this menu. I'm going to touch on a few of them and show a couple of the default sliders that are either turned on or off that might be best for you to turn on. So like I said, if you ever have any issue, the best place to go is right here in these settings. So if something happened or something's wrong, you also want to really make sure that you go through and read all of these different settings, especially like I said in the settings tab or the recordings tab. Make sure that you go through and read through all of these before you have a meeting, because there might be something there that you don't realize is checked, and you don't want to get into the middle of a meeting with students or faculty or staff and have that checked the whole time and not realize it until the end of the meeting. So like I said, it's probably best, I'm going to touch on a few of these, but I would really highly recommend going through and looking at them on your own. All right, so let's go back to the profile. So this is just the basic info that it's going to give you. Now, user type. Automatically, we are all UCO faculty and staff are on the basic account. There are premium and pro accounts that you can upgrade to, but that you would have to go through the TRC for that. But just so you know, the basic account is what everyone has. And there are some limitations with that, but really not that many. So the next tab is meetings. So here you can schedule a meeting if you want. So if you've got a specific meeting time that you want to go ahead and book, then that's where you can do it. And then this is where you can also see your previous meetings. See, I've done a couple of tests, and so it's showing me my previous ones, and I can reopen them as well. So if you create a meeting and you have all your settings set up for that meeting and you just want to have the same meeting again with the same people, you can start that same meeting. And see, this is where you'll find that meeting ID. You know, in that first window where it says join a meeting, well, this is where you would insert that ID number. So if you have an ID number, if you give your students an ID number or your colleagues, that's where that is. All right, so personal meeting room. So what this is kind of like your digital office, if you will. So you can always have this available. So it's just like your static meeting room. So if you want to give this information to your students or your colleagues, if they need an instant meeting with you, then this will always be available, and that's your meeting ID, your personal meeting room ID. All right. So next, webinars. Webinars are only allowed in the pro, business, or premium accounts, so we don't have access to that. All right, recordings. So what's nice about Zoom is that you can record the meetings that you have. You can either do a cloud recording or you can do a local recording. So a cloud means that it saves it within the Zoom account, and you can find it here in your profile or locally, so it can save onto your computer. So you can also download the desktop client, and I would highly recommend that you do that because it just means that it's more powerful. But if you do download the desktop client, then it will probably download it locally. But it'll also be saved here for you as well, or at least tell you the location of where it is so you can find it again. All right, so settings. This is where we really get into the bulk of it. So this is, like I said, where you need to kind of go through and figure out what settings you want turned on and turned off. Because there are certain things that are automatically turned on and certain things that are automatically turned off, like I said. So I would highly recommend making sure that computer audio is selected. And if you want to use that personal meeting room, like I said, that's your static instant connection, then you need to turn that on. So you would need to turn on your personal meeting room. All right, I'm also going to go down here. So I would also make sure that the whiteboard is selected. That's a nice feature to have. And I'll show you the interface of the chat room here in a second, or the meeting room in a second. But I would say you want to have the whiteboard selected and the remote control, and nonverbal feedback is fun as well. So that's kind of a way that you can provide nonverbal feedback with icons that are in the participation menu or panel. All right, so in the meeting, these advanced sections, I don't know if I have time today to talk about it, but Zoom has a really neat feature called breakout rooms. So it's almost like where you can have people in a virtual meeting break out into separate rooms. It is a really, really great feature, but you have to turn it on. So one fun thing too is if you have a messy office, or if you're in a place that might have a distracting background, you can turn on a virtual background, which is pretty cool. I'll show you that as well. I have that feature on turned on mine. So it works pretty well. It can be a little bit fuzzy. It's not, like a perfect green screen, but it works actually pretty well. All right, and then allow screen sharing. I think I would definitely turn that on and make sure that that is accessible, because that's one thing that is used very frequently. So I would allow screen sharing. It doesn't automatically share your screen, but it allows for that option to be there. All right. And for the most part, yeah, like I said, you can go through these and just make sure, just personalize it however you want. So there is one feature especially that I want to point out to you guys. It's in the settings section under recording, not meeting. That's where we were looking earlier, but under recording. Some of you may have the option or more options or advanced features for the cloud recording. If you don't have this available, what that means is that you're probably automatically locally recording, or that you've already downloaded the desktop client. So if you have these options available in your profile under recording for cloud recording, you need to make sure that you deselect the record and audio only file selection. So make sure that that is not selected. What that's going to do is at the end of the meeting, if you're recording and that's still selected, then you will only get audio from that meeting. You won't get any of the video footage. So that's really important, and we've had a couple of incidences where that's happened at the end of the meeting. They didn't realize that was checked, and they didn't have the footage that they needed. So that's just one that I want to highlight that's kind of sneaky in there. All right, so now what I want to show you guys is how to host a meeting and what that interface looks like. So one of the quickest ways to do that is you can go up here to the right-hand side. You can go to host a meeting with video off or video on, or like I mentioned before, you can come up to meetings and you can schedule a meeting. So I'm going to show you how to schedule a meeting, and then I'll show you what the meeting looks like. All right, so schedule a meeting. I'm going to click here, like I'm under the meetings tab, and I click schedule a meeting. So you make it a topic. I'm just going to say tech tip. Give it a description. You're going to say when. You have to do it in 30-minute increments. That's a little bit of a frustrating piece about Zoom. However, people can join the room before it starts. So you can say it starts at 2, but you can have people log in at 1:45 and get the meeting started. So it's not absolutely set in stone. So this is just something that you could schedule. So I'm going to schedule it for 3:30, and we'll say tomorrow. And the duration. So this is something about the Zoom basic plan. It only allows for, you have a 40-minute time limit on your meetings with 3 or more participants. So that's a little bit of a con about the basic plan. You could just, after 40 minutes, start a new one if you wanted to. But 40 minutes is a long time. I don't know if meetings will go that long. But just keep that in mind as if you're planning for a long meeting that you have a 40-minute time limit. So I can't do the duration an hour. So I'm going to have to make it 30 minutes. So, all right, so I don't want this to be a reoccurring meeting, so I'm going to deselect that. And you can either generate a new meeting ID or you can keep it your personal meeting ID. And yeah, this all looks good. You can require a meeting password enabled to join before the host. I'm going to select that. I would select it if you want your students to be able to go ahead and come in and get set up, and if you don't want it to start exactly at 2 o'clock. So you can allow that feature that students can join the room before you come. You can enable a waiting room. So if someone comes early, they have like a little waiting room before they come to the main meeting room. So you could do that. And you could pre-assign your breakout room rooms if you wanted to. So this is where I think, like I mentioned, that if you want to do a breakout room, this is where you would create a room. So I'm just going to say breakout room number 1, and this is where you could add participants. I'm just going to add some of my coworkers. So I've already got these breakout rooms set up, so I could add a second room. Here we go. So, like I said, that's just how you would manage the breakout room assignments. All right, so I am just going to save. And you can add it to your calendars if you need. And here is the URL. So if you just want to send an email or have a link in D2L, then this is the link that they would go to. Or you can copy the invitation. So this is what the invitation looks like. So it's just a little bit more formal, but the link will work just fine. All right, so I can either start this meeting, edit this meeting, or I can delete this meeting. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete this meeting because that was just a test. All right, if you want to start a meeting right away, you don't want to schedule it, you can come up here to the right-hand side and host a meeting. And I'm going to say with video on. All right, it's going to take you to this prompt window, and it's going to pop up. If you've already downloaded the desktop client, then it will open. But if you haven't, then this is where you can click on that link and download and run the desktop client. All right, so now we are in the meeting space. So it's blank right now because I have not started the video. So I'm going to go ahead and start video. And there you have me on the screen. So I can also mute my microphone here, and this is where I can adjust audio settings. This is just a quick shortcut to any microphone or speaker settings that you need. Same with the video. So I mentioned earlier in the video that you have the option to do a virtual background. So I'm going to click on choose a virtual background, and I'm going to choose one of these. So I could be in San Francisco. So you can kind of see where my ponytail is, that it does a little funny thing, but you know, it works, for the most part, works pretty well. So there's lots of different ones. I could be on the beach. So if you have like a distracting background, if you're just not able to get somewhere that just has a blank wall, or if you just don't want people to see your background, you can choose your own. So if you want to upload your own background, then you just come to this little check right here that says add a virtual background image. Click on that and it will add from your desktop. So that's just something a little fun you can play around with if you'd like. All right, so actually, let me turn that off because that's pretty distracting. I'm going to go back to none. So while we're in this screen, I'm going to show you some of the shortcut settings. These are all, most of these are also available in the advanced settings that we were just looking at in your profile, but these are just some quick and easy within the Zoom meeting settings. So we've got general, so really it just depends on what your preference is for a lot of these. Video, this is where you can make sure that you have the correct webcam selected. You also have the feature to touch up your appearance. Right now, I don't know if you can tell, but it's kind of softening my face a little bit. I'm not going to turn that off because I actually quite like that. So we'll keep that as is. Audio, this is same thing, just where if you need to adjust your audio, anything like that, you can do that. so we're going to go back to the menu screen at the bottom, and I'll explain a few more of those features. So we have invite, manage participants, share, chat, and breakout rooms. Now some of you may have breakout rooms, some of you may not. Breakout rooms is an option, a feature that I selected in our settings. So if you want to use breakout rooms, and then you need to go back to your settings and make sure that that option's selected, and then you will have it in the menu. So I'm going to go back to invite, and this is where you can copy the URL to your meeting, or you can copy the invitation. So it's up to you how you want to invite people. You can copy the URL and put it in an email or a message, or in a link in your D2L course, whichever way, however you would like to do that. Manage participants. So when I click on this screen, this is where all of the different participants would come up. But I'm the only one in here right now, so that's why it's only me, and it says that I'm the host. So I have a lot more capabilities than the rest of my students. Down here, this is where I enabled those non-verbal communication tools. I enabled that, and so I have those features here. So it's kind of like emojis, kind of. There's just a few options. So you might utilize that, you might not. It's just the thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you think. All right, this is also where if you need to, you can mute someone, or if you have someone who's not acting appropriately in a meeting, then you have the capabilities to mute them or have them leave the room. There's also a feature that if you want to close the meeting and lock it, if you want it to start at 2 o'clock and anyone who comes in after 2 o'clock is late, then you can come down to this more section and you can lock the meeting. So that's a feature for you too. All right. So that's a participant screen. So here's the share screen. So this is where we can do a little bit more, not just do a webcam, or this is also where we can share our screen. So I'll show you some of these options. So I've got my desktop, I've got my other desktop. I've also got the whiteboard. Let's see if that'll come up for you guys. All right, so in this feature, I have the whiteboard. I can draw if I want to. Let's see if it'll let me do text. I can write text. I can do a stamp, I can do hearts, anything like that. So there's lots of different things that you can do here. So I'm going to stop that share, and I'll show you some of these other features. I'll make that big. So you also have the option to share your iPhone or your iPad, which is really cool. If you have an app that you're trying to explain to your students, or if you have something on your phone, so you can either do that via AirPlay, if you have that feature on your iPad or iOS device, or you can do it via cable, so you can cable it in. And so these are just the different things that I have open on my screen, and so I can go back and forth. All right. You also, if you want to play a video for the people in your meetings, and you need to make sure that that is selected there. You need to make sure that your share computer sound box is selected. So if you're showing a YouTube clip and they're not hearing the sound, and that's probably the reason. So you need to make sure you go back in and share computer sound. All right, chat, I'll open that up. So no one's in my chat right now because it's just me in this room, but this is where you could chat to your students if someone's talking, or if someone can ask a question. You can also chat individually if maybe if you don't want to interrupt the person talking, but you're hearing a noise from someone else, and you can say, hey, turn this noise down, or something like that without interrupting. So that's an option. And then breakout rooms, like I mentioned, this is where you have to turn that feature on in your settings. So I can also create breakout rooms within my meetings. So if I decide, you know what, this is a good opportunity, why don't we all think, pair, share, or go off and have our own separate conversations or discussions, and you can create these breakout rooms. There's lots of really cool things that you can do with breakout rooms. I don't have time to touch on them all today, but I might in the future, if there's a need, or if you want to contact CC, then we can give you some more information on how to utilize breakout rooms, because it's a really neat tool, and something that I think students would really enjoy, especially in an online environment. All right, so those are pretty much the basics of Zoom, and hopefully that should all get you started. I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting, and how you do that is you just come here to the bottom where it says End Meeting, close that, and I'm going to end meeting for all. So that's pretty much, like I said, the basics of Zoom. Hopefully that can get you started. There's lots of really cool features. The best way is to just practice. Before you get started in Zoom, make sure that your account is authenticated and that you have the settings all where you like them. It's probably a good idea to do a test run before you use it with students. Maybe just find a colleague and give it a go, give it a try. It's a really powerful tool and it's right at your disposal. It's free. So like I said, just go to uco.zoom.us and try your hand at it. On the next screen, I'll have all of my contact information and all of Cece's contact information if you have more questions or if there are more things that you want to know about or features that you want to try and you just don't know where to get started or need some help, then we're happy to help.